I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. If you're not satisfied, we'll eat our hat. Today, we're going to be talking about Device 6, which was developed by Simogo and released on iOS devices in 2013. And Simogo, for me, is getting dangerously close to the can do nothing wrong sort of like sphere. Admittedly, the only two games I've played are the ones that we've talked about on Pocket, but both of them have completely blown my socks off and into the next state. Like, I really enjoyed this game.
Yeah, we kind of are doing this anyway just by talking about their games, but I would like to give them a shout out as a developer. Like, if you've been listening to our podcast and haven't checked them out, do so.
Yeah. If you're like, oh, well, Pocket, who cares? I'll just listen to this, whatever, and then not play the game. Play this game, and then go back and play Gear Walk also, because both of them are really, really good. So, the thing that I wanted to talk about that doesn't wholly center around the game, as is seemingly like my new habit every time that we do a Pocket episode, is I want to start somewhere disjointed and then come into the game, is writing in video games, which if you've played Device 6, you can already tell where I'm going with this, but video games, the medium that we've chosen to talk about every week ever for the last several years, it's a medium that's very action-based. Right? Like, you expressing control over something else. And writing in games is something that is often maligned. We just talked about Symphony of the Night, which would have gone up like a week ago at this point.
Yeah, it's not as much so these days, but definitely took a long time to get any good.
Yeah, there's very few stories prior to like the mid-2000s that people were like, oh yeah, this is great. I would write the novel adaptation of this. So it's always kind of taken a back seat to other elements of games. And part of that is just the industry getting its footing, and other parts of that are the people who are good writers aren't looking for jobs in the tech field. So it's really interesting to see a game like Device 6 that not only puts writing at the forefront, but then also integrates it as the like primary means of engaging with the game.
Yeah, I've got a few notes relating to that sort of stuff as well at the top of my list. I feel like this game is a combination between like a simple text adventure and like a choose your own adventure book, kind of. It's basically like you took a chapter of a book and you made it a level in a video game. It's kind of what it feels like. The text, you had to like scroll through it on the screen, and it like becomes like this linear path that you can like go back and forth on, and it's like a really cool concept.
Yeah, the fact that the words, like the physical words themselves, become your like map through an area. The narrative of the game itself, like the actual point A to point B story, deals with this in a more literal way, which we'll get into in a minute. But just thinking of like when you read a book or a story of any kind, really, it describes what the protagonist is doing to you. And so it's all set. Like, you aren't influencing the protagonist's movements when you're reading a book. Which, saying out loud, it seems stupid. But the thing with this game is that you can influence which parts of it you're interacting with at any given time. And it's even difficult to tell from like a literal standpoint whether or not like Anna, the character, is going back and forth in these areas, or if she is like supposed to be linearly solving these things by recalling things from before.
Right.
you don't have like a perfect inner monologue. Not that she's like an unreliable narrator, but you don't know everything that she's thinking or doing at any given time. So anything is kind of possible there.
Yeah, you're definitely very much a separate entity in the fiction of the game than she is.
In the fiction of the game, you were very literally a separate entity.
But like while you're playing, it does kind of feel like a blurred thing at points.
And to me, that's probably the most interesting thing about the game. I think between that and the the visual and sound design of it are the things that really stand out. But the groundbreaking part of the story or of the game itself is this like text. In everything is text-based, not just text-based like an adventure game, but like strictly text to do everything, except for the occasional images.
Yeah, as a graphic design person, that really stood out to me like right off the bat, because I had to take like multiple classes specifically just on typography, and this almost feels like it could have been a project or like somebody who was like a head creative person on this game had to have been a design person.
Oh yeah.
Because like the text itself, I don't know if they had like an algorithm or something, because I feel like this would have been pointlessly difficult to do otherwise. All the text is justified in such a way that none of the words get cut off in the middle and they're like hyphenated to the next line. Like everything ends up in like a perfect block of text.
Right.
And I just thought that was really impressive and was really hard to do, and most people won't notice or appreciate that. But and I really love how the text, like they play with it and how the text will mimic what the character is doing. Like the really standout one is the spiral staircase.
Yep.
But like even in the first level, it's like you're going down it like it's a normal block of text, and then it like turns to the side and goes in like a line, and then it's like then she rounded the corner, and then the text turns, and it's a real simple thing, you know, if you just take that one specific moment on its own, but a lot of different little things like that kind of add up into this cool experience.
And I have to imagine that there are people out there who would probably be really annoyed at having to continually rotate their phone. But as people who know me are aware, my like favorite book is House of Leaves, which does this kind of shit anyway, and just a regular book, and so I'm kind of used to that. In addition to that, there's also the like the internal monologue, which is written in italics and is like separated from the main text, which also forces you to sort of like, because your vision is limited by the screen as it scrolls, and so to progress through it, you have to either scroll or stop, meaning that sometimes when that text is above the like main narrative text of the story, you have to do this like back and forth scrolling to sort of like get both things at the same time. And they kind of cleverly, I'm assuming this was all intentional, but they cleverly put it so that you can't read the whole sentence, then go back and read the other one. You have to like either commit and scroll past a bunch of text and then come back and read it, or try and read both sentences in the middle, which makes it like artificially more confusing than it normally would be.
Yeah.
And that feels really on brand with what the game is going for.
Yeah, that annoyed me a lot while I was going through levels, but yeah, it felt kind of cheeky. They were, like, you could almost feel the hand of the designer like pointing and laughing at you, like, haha, you want to smoothly read between these two things and I won't let you.
I wonder if because I played this on an iPhone, I assume that the aspect ratio is just locked no matter what device you're on.
That would make sense.
But yeah, because I doubt that if you put this on an iPad that the text would take up more. It would be larger, but it probably wouldn't scroll differently. But I don't know, it might be worth looking into.
I feel like it has to be the same. Because it definitely feels like it's designed around it, like how the text is spaced, and I don't think that would change between devices.
But the other thing is that I ended up, and I feel like Simogo just want you always to have a notepad when you're playing their games.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to use a different, like just another like Apple product to write up all of my notes on and have them here. And it gets like, it's very similar to the notes that I took for Your Walk.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't imagine playing this game without something to write down, to remember things, because there's so much text going on. It's not like in a Resident Evil game where you're like, the solution, the lock to the door code is 213, and then you just go in your head, you're like, okay, 213, it's 213, and then you walk chanting 213 to yourself to the door and then put it in. Like in this one, in order to get to the place you need to insert it, you have to go through text to do it. So it seems like there would be a ton of moving back and forth if you didn't write it down.
Yeah, I also have notes on the back of this page. Yeah, that's just a thing that they clearly seem to just like doing. And I know we're both on the same page of just being into that. And that combined with the moving the phone around to like read the text in all its various orientations, it's just something I really like. It feels more active, like the really making use of the phone. I know this keeps coming up when we talk about phone games, but I think Simogo might have firmly established they may have firmly grasped the art of designing for phones.
Yeah, I think that if you look at our catalog that we've done on mobile games, which is fairly short, I don't think we've done any for the main podcast, and we've done 5 or 6 for Pocket, and the games we choose to talk about are ones where it is relevant to say this plays on a phone like it cannot play anywhere else. And that's kind of the separating factor. If a game can be played on another device, it's probably better on that device.
Yeah.
Whereas with the phone, it's like if there's something that really takes advantage of the hardware like this, or to some extent even Monument Valley did, definitely Simulacra, those things just play really well on with the hardware,
right? And
it is like, I think that's just the secret.
Yeah,
I think if you're gonna make a good phone game,
yeah. And the thing is that there are a lot of other touchscreen devices now. Like, I feel like this would just be better if played on an iPad. Like,
yeah.
The same thing with well, not Simulacra because it's specifically supposed to be on a phone. But so that's like a unique case. But like, yeah, I feel like things like Monument Valley and this would be better on an iPad. But that's kind of like splitting hairs, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, to some extent. But yeah, I just like things, touchscreen devices, particularly ones that are like, that have a gyro function in them, that kind of thing, like those devices that really take advantage of it. That's been the theme so far.
Right. But you were saying a little bit earlier, like, having to go back and forth through the text if you didn't write certain things down. And that was one thing that I wanted to comment on, is like not really liking in this game, that if something is giving you trouble and you have to go back and look for stuff, going back and forth through the text feels like backtracking in like a really bad form.
Right.
And comparing it to like something like Simulacra, that it felt really natural in that game because you're already so used to the
phone interface.
The idea of going through your phone for stuff, so you don't really think about it in that game. But in this one, like, having to scroll back through the text is really annoying.
Because even if, because I think that their intention was, they give the locations these really evocative names, the Wall of Life and Death and shit, and you see that, and there's like a gray bar, and you're supposed to be able to look at the bar, and know where you are, like, physically, without having to actually read the text. But
they do a good job with that.
They do. I never really connected with it. Like, the titles of locations didn't really stick with me throughout. So I made like a spatial map in my head And that's kind of how I was like, how long ago was this? It was like X minutes, so I probably have to scroll through for like this many seconds to get back to where I am, and just kind of figured it out through there. There were a couple like problem areas for me. The bears, having to go back to the bears to listen to their dialogue again, was a little tedious because they were so far away from the keypad.
That was the roughest part for me. Like, that puzzle didn't click with me at all because I didn't understand the concept that they're like talking to each other
Right.
on phones. Like, I thought they were talking to me, like the character, or and it took me a long time to work out like what was going on.
Yeah, I made like 3 trips back to the bears before I realized that I was getting different dialogue depending on which direction I was coming from.
Yeah,
and I realized it was because I was pressing a button and then pressing the second button to initiate the call.
Yeah, I thought that was actually smartly designed because when you come to it the first time, you're going to click the one on the left first.
Right.
And then when you get to the thing and it doesn't work, you come back and you're probably going to do the one on the right first, and it's going to be different dialogue. The thing for me was just figuring out like what they were like. Yeah, they were talking to each other, just did not click with me.
I kind of want to dive a little bit into some of the more like designed elements here, with the fact that and the bears are really what like sold it for me more than any other part of the game. But this game is like actually kind of creepy in a way I wasn't expecting when I went into it.
Yeah, it's got kind of like a like 50s or 60s like future paranoia sci-fi kind of a thing going on. Like, I want to say like 60s, like secret government or something, like weird, like some Big Brother's watching you kind of a feeling.
Yeah, it's like the Milkman level from Psychonauts, but
yeah,
not a cartoon.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
good comparison.
It's real weird, yeah, because it does have that 50s aesthetic, but they've like established that that's not the time period where it takes place. Like they come out and say that it's like a modern setting, and so there's this there's like an anachronistic quality to it. But then in addition to that, they also put in all of this like stuff, just like things that are unsettling, destroyed mannequins, the screaming doll, the guy who repeatedly plays the same song over and over again, that are like creepy in like sort of an off-putting like Stepford Wives, Uncanny Valley kind of way. And I think that they nail that, even though the game sort of sets itself up like its aesthetic is going to be this like spy thing. Like it feels like James Bond, but then you go into it and suddenly you're like, you have the isolated, terrified atmosphere of like a Myst game or something. It's real good. Also, the bears' voices really gave me like were reminiscent of the radio guy from PT.
Yeah, there's that. It feels like it's being played on like an old record player. Like there's this staticky kind of unclear quality to the sound.
Yep, and I love it. I love it a lot.
No, yeah, definitely like A+ on the like aesthetics and the theming like that. It almost kind of gave me like a theme park animatronics kind of vibe, specifically with the bears. Like there's these little scenarios that were set up for you in that kind of way. Like it's all like manufactured as like a weird thing for you to go through.
Yeah, and that's I even really liked if you sit there on the screen with the guy playing the song, there it like scrolls the lyrics by, as well as like all this technical information about like what is happening.
You can see
the
the sound waves too.
Yeah, and there's like the chorus of the song is like, it's Anna, sweet Anna, but it says like it's and then insert name, like it's calling a variable in,
right?
And that ties in with all of the other sort of what the game, like in the epilogue, refers to as like unencrypted information or something that's being sent to the player character as opposed to Anna herself. And it's like that stuff being peppered throughout the game, it really drove the intrigue and made it more interesting than if it was just like a straightforward linear room escape type thing.
Yeah, it kind of gave me like Coraline vibes. If you remember that movie well enough or have read the book. Like where she goes into the other world and then like the people have the button eyes, which already makes them feel fake.
Yeah, the other mother.
Yeah, and the dad makes up a song about her, and like, you know, it's like everything's catered to her to get her to try to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And like this has a different atmosphere than that, but like everything's kind of targeted at you specifically.
It's like personalized in a creepy way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's real good. And I'm glad that they chose to do it in this like second person type of perspective, because that works in this, because you are sort of kind of perceiving yourself as Anna when playing, but the game explicitly sets you up as a separate entity outside of that. Mm-hmm. So you get the personalized thing that Anna is experiencing more or less firsthand without having to go through all the hoops, like the Earthbound, like entering your name over the course of the game and having it show up at the end, or like even in Simulacra they do it where if you enter your name into certain things it'll pop things up. Like,
right,
you don't have to jump through any weird like do any weird setups. You can just have it and it works.
Yeah.
So I really liked that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a reach, but it almost kind of makes me think of like Obra Dinn, where like you almost kind of feel like you're a detective who's like able to relive this event that happened to another person.
I mean, if we're stretching just for sweet episode callbacks, it's almost kind of like playing Night Trap when you're the scat agent watching the kids through the TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you definitely feel like you're like almost like you're researching like the events of a case or something.
Yeah, and once again, because it's presented in that text form.
Mm-hmm.
I know one thing I wanted to mention is that this game is much easier than Year Walk was, at least in my experience.
I completely the opposite for me. I have in my notes here that the puzzles really didn't click with me at first. It got easier as it went along, but I found myself constantly misinterpreting things and having to go back and forth and check things like a bunch of times. Like it was very like not a smooth curve for me.
This has to be like, there needs to be some kind of NOCLIP psychological study, because I remember having this conversation on the Year Walk episode and talking about how I thought Year Walk was really hard. Mm-hmm. And you were like, I just kind of breezed through it in about 10 minutes, you dumb idiot. So I think there's just like a style of puzzle that is in this game that isn't in the other one.
I feel like it would make sense that I would deal better at absorbing visual information, and that your reading comprehension's probably better than mine.
This could track. It might be a verbal versus visual thing.
But like one of the first puzzles I remember, it was like in the room of the Renaissance man, and like I had to look that part up because apparently like there was the picture had like Leonardo da Vinci in it, and I don't think I ever saw him in that picture at all. Like I don't think I ever noticed that.
It wasn't a visual thing. I think they state it in the text.
Oh, okay. Then I didn't go back and read it.
Right. Or it was like a dialogue thing.
Yeah, and then there was something where you had to like look at what like radio station like that
the channel
audio was coming through on, and I remember going to it and it just said 12 in the corner. So I was like, oh, it's 12. And then I went and put that in and it was wrong, and I scrolled back to it and looked at it and it was like it had the 12, and then it changed to a different number, and I'm like, I didn't understand why that happened. And like so like there was a lot there were a lot of not very smooth instances like that for me, and then the bear thing right after that. Like I kind of disliked the game at first because it was like a rough start for me.
It was really obtuse.
Yeah. But it got better as it went along, for sure.
The explanation for that one, by the way, is that it's a security camera, and you need to find the channel that has the that is showing the room with the radio. Is what it is. But that kind of thing is exactly what I get rock hard rager for.
I didn't notice that it was changing. Like I swear every other time I looked at it, it just had like the static image on it
with a 12. Yeah. There were a couple of places where that did happen, where there was something that was clearly like scheduled to occur at a time, and I was either too fast or too slow,
Yep.
and just like missed whatever it was, like the important information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there were a couple of these. I have something here. Okay, I accidentally did the backwards audio thing on my first go through. Like I discovered the room before or like after I had just randomly set it to the backwards audio one.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
And I caught the like I think it was like the statue thing in the garden part. I caught like on my first walk through or whatever, and there were lots of hints that were there that threw me off because they were for things I already knew. We probably just move this chair.
Yeah, we should probably not have that chair there.
Staying in. Yeah, so I don't know. I thought it was a little bit easier than Earwalk, but I can see also it being difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Earwalk has more like, yeah, it's just absorbing visual information in that game. Where this, you have to like go back and reread stuff, which to me is maybe not necessarily like harder, but more of a hassle, which makes it feel harder to me.
It made my notes a lot more concise for
Yeah.
what it's worth, because the ones in Earwalk were all like illustrations
Right.
and shit.
So we've talked a lot, or at least you opened with talking about the writing in the game. So we haven't really touched on the story.
That's what I was thinking, exactly the same thing.
And
I'm plugged into your device too right now, Andy.
But I overall like it, but kind of found myself wanting a little bit more. Like a little bit more intrigue sprinkled in there, like a trail of breadcrumbs of like actually trying to figure out what's going on. Like that stuff picked up, like once you run into the Hat Man or whatever he's called, Agent
247.
Yeah. I wanted a little bit more of like that kind of stuff of like finding the man behind the curtain kind of a thing.
Yeah, I can get that. I think how do I want to describe this? The narrative is weird because it is written as a book and played as a game. And because of that, it has like a deterministic sort of like beginning, middle, end. But the narrative and the situation you're in when you're experiencing it, i.e. playing a video game, makes you, and not only that, but a puzzle-solving game. Like, you want to figure out this mystery. You're like, God damn it, I am MI6's greatest. Why am I not the one who's figuring this stuff out?
The story downplays those elements, I feel like.
Like, a lot.
Yeah, like Anna herself doesn't really seem all that concerned with figuring things out in that way.
I think it's because Anna doesn't have the context that the player has. Because player 249, have like the extra information about the devices that are coming up, and so you know something is up, and it dawns on you, I want to say fairly early, that that you are in some way influencing Anna through the things that they're describing. You at least know after the first 3 chapters that she has like something implanted in her, or she's going through like a simulation because of the way that the thing is told. And I think it is good. I like it. I like the story. But I agree that I wish there was more
payoff.
Not necessarily. I'm okay with how vague it is when it ends. What I'm less okay about is the fact that there was less sort of like digging that you, the player, could do. Like, it's, I guess it's kind of stupid to like want just more meta garbage all over the game, but I wanted a little more meta garbage.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be like a ton, but like a little bit more would have been nice. Like some secrets to find.
Yeah.
Like the like with the mask, I'm not suggesting that they keep the mask the rest of the game, but like another mechanic like that where you can reveal some kind of secret path or something would be cool.
Yeah, because the bridge sequence was a cool sequence. Because
That was my favorite chapter.
yeah, that was very good. One thing I wanted to mention about the writing, before we like we go through the whole story.
Yeah.
Is basically the very beginning of the game, because one of the things that the game consistently does that narratively speaking doesn't have a ton of weight to it. It's just sort of like evocative and there for jokes, I'm not sure, is the little interstitial bits in between chapters where they like give you a survey. That was maybe, I think, the most genius move that this game has, is that the first survey asks you details about what you just did. So even though you don't know whether or not it's going to have any bearing on what you do throughout the rest of the game, you now are clued in to like pay more attention to things,
Right.
And then they can start introducing clues earlier and further away from their eventual solutions, and you'll know to pay attention to them.
Right.
I thought that was really good. That was use of the writing in a really good way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't really tie into anything at all.
No, and it kind of relates to what we were just talking about, where it gets you more curious and like wondering like why they're basically showing you like Rorschach tests with like the bugs. And stuff. Yeah, like it gets your mind going on that level in a way that it kind of doesn't deliver on.
Yeah, I attempted to meet those at face value as much as I could. Like, in the first chapter, it's like, which of these do you think best describes the previous chapter? A circle, a triangle, or a square? And I was like, sitting there going like, well, logically, if you went this way and then you put the two pieces together, it's kind of like a triangle, right? Like, but then by the end of the game, I was kind of like, I don't see any way that a rational person could be like moth versus beetle. Like, one of these means doubt.
Yeah, they're definitely just supposed to be like psychological things.
Which harks to the really good sequences that did a similar thing in Until Dawn, but had I think equally no like value as far as like
I don't
the
remember
gameplay.
Yeah, in that circumstance, but
I don't know. Little tiny things, small details being changed would have gone a long way to make those feel more relevant.
yeah. Or like them being referenced at all. Like if something that you said felt like it came up in the story later, that could have been just enough, even if it happened only once, for like to feel like a payoff, I think.
So, how did you feel about the fact that at the end of the story, you're just shot and murdered?
Wasn't that Anna that was killed?
Yeah, Anna gets killed in the end.
Okay.
Well, it's hard to separate.
Yeah. It felt like a fitting end to me, at least based on my perception of what kind of story it was. I don't really have that much like deeper thoughts on it. It just kind of felt like an appropriate. If this was just a book, I felt like that would have felt like an appropriate end, because she never really, like, she knows too much, and then they're gonna like snuff her out. It feels like it makes sense. Like in the context of the game, though, where it feels like I'm witnessing it, it does have like a weirder kind of connotation that I don't quite understand.
That's what I was mostly digging for, I think. Like,
because I don't know if we, as the player, kind of relate more to the guy in the hat as somebody behind the scenes, or if we relate to more as somebody in Anna's situation, or if there's a difference there at all.
Yeah, I get the impression that you, like, 247, Bowler Hat Man, goes through the situation that you're in, you, Andy, with Agent 246 or Player 246.
So it's like every other.
Yeah, so like the first person would just go through it, and then every person after that would watch each person's thing going through it, and they send the puzzle inputs to them.
Right.
and back, so on and so forth, which would theoretically mean that like device 7, which isn't what that would be called because it has a specific meaning in the game, but device 6-2 or whatever, the sequel, would be number 250, watching you, Andy, play through the simulation,
right?
Which would be wild and cool if they could pull it off in like an interesting way.
Device 6 too.
If Lightning Returns.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be cool. But yeah, that's sort of what I'm... Because I thought it made sense that she got killed. Whether or not she's actually... I assume that she was actually killed because she was experiencing something totally different than a gunshot to the head. So she's like under active simulation, and then she's actually murdered.
Yeah. It does kind of... I feel like there is a direct parallel, but I can't think of it on the spot. But it feels like they're doing an experiment where they're doing this over and over again to kind of like perfect whatever it is they're trying to achieve. Like they keep sending things through the simulation and gathering data on it to try to end up with like a perfect result, like a perfect android or something. Whatever their sci-fi corporation goal might be.
Yeah, their product. Because the way that it's described is basically like the devices, the various devices that all are receivers for device 6, I believe, like simulate consciousness, and the goal was to make you, the player, perceive Anna as having free will.
Right, like a Turing test.
Right. Whether that means Anna isn't even a person, I don't know. Like,
yeah, she might just be
like a robot, or even just a concept on a page.
Right.
Which is what she actually is, but narratively, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, like I love that aspect of it, the fact that it is so open-ended. But I felt like the ending could have implicated more, even without necessarily telling you more.
Right. No, I would agree with that.
That's what I have on the story. It was good. Fun's marketing. 40 minutes.
I think the only other thing that I wanted to comment on is just that the main character's name was Anna, and that was the case in Simulacra as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just an observation.
Yeah, that is it is a common name, but because we've decided to talk about both and both have other similarities, it's a little, we might be brands and vats.
It's very on theme with the story, too.
It really is. We're in the NOCLIP universe right now, the NOCLIP cinematic universe. I did also want to mention just briefly before we finish up that I thought the sound design was really good as well.
Yeah.
It takes a lot from the sort of ambiance that Your Walk had, with really similar sort of like moving stereo channel movement and sounds, and that was all cool and there, but also the amount of work that seems to have gone into like putting together all of the little sound clips and like the spooky voices and stuff, and then like that guy wrote a goddamn song for it, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that part a lot.
Yeah, like I think all of the music and sound effects were used in a way that like, because they all had to mean something, and the fact that it did and worked and never was too confusing is like a huge thumbs up for me.
No, yeah, it's really tightly designed, for sure.
Do we have final thoughts?
Yeah. I was talking about the design of it, like the graphic design of the text, and how I really like that it feels like you've turned the chapter of a book into a level in a game. And I think they really play with that concept and really, like, I think, nail it. And it really makes you want to see another game try a similar thing. Like, I think there's something like a sub-genre could be created from this. Like, I think it's a cool idea. It's like an interactive, not just an interactive story, but like literally like an interactive book. It's hard to describe as if you're describing it to somebody that's never played it before.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really unique concept, and I think they do it really well. And yeah, I would like to see more. And I've said similar things about Year Walk. I think Simogo makes a lot of really cool, unique games, and I'd like to see other studios kind of try similar concepts.
Yeah, I agree with all of those things. Putting Final Fantasy together in this game is like not super easy for me.
No.
I think that we kind of dumped a lot of what we thought of really early. I have very little for this game that is not praise, and it's, I don't know, like the fact that it's short, it's not too bad as far as like just playing it goes. It's pretty intuitive, all things considered. It's cheap. It's really fucking good and unique. I just recommend it to like anybody who can like even do that. I think the one thing that I do want to say is that your mention of it being like potentially like a genre thing, like it could have copycats that could also do this well. This is unlike Year Walk, where we joked about there being a sequel to it.
Yeah.
This is a game that I would love to see a sequel to, like just a continuation on this story.
Yeah.
I
feel
don't
like
call for that very often.
I feel like they wouldn't be interested in it. They don't seem like a studio that does sequels, but that's just me putting my perception onto them. They might be totally into that. I have no idea.
You are right as far as like what it seems like, though,
Yeah.
because they've yet to do one. So,
And I'd probably like to see them just keep making new, unique things. So, more power to them.
more power to them. That's the thesis here.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to NoClip Pocket this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about detention.
And to longtime listeners of the podcast, it's kind of similar to The Cat Lady, but as made by like a Japanese studio.
Mm-hmm. Not Japanese, though. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com, where you can find our Twitter, Discord, YouTube channel, our email address, all of our cool episodes about cool, great games, and our also cool episodes about not good games. Smash that like button. That's just the emergency. I don't know how to end the podcast. Oh, for the art for this episode, can you write out a transcript of the entire episode and have it follow?
No.